Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we help small business owners and experts to win corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where we talk to both business leaders and entrepreneurs who are using their platform in order to affect big positive change in the world. And we have a very important show today, one talking all about mental health. Before we do that, just a couple of quick housekeeping reminders. If you're watching this at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, then we are live, which means we want to hear from you. We want your questions, we want your comments. So please don't be shy, engage with us. And I think you're going to especially want to do that today when you get a chance in just a few seconds here to meet our guest. Also, a couple of quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel on YouTube under Angelique Rewers. Make sure you've subscribed to us on Spotify so you can listen to the audio of these shows on the go. And our newest platform that we are reaching out and creating important conversations about how you can lead your movement is over on Clubhouse, where you can find me at Angelique Rewers. All right, so let's get into today's show, which is all about mental health. You look at what's going on with this global pandemic. And I think for a lot of us, what we've done is dig deep. We've tested our mettle. We've stayed focused and moving forward because that's what we have had to do. But eventually it's going to catch up with us. I suspect after things start to ease up, and we get out of this, suddenly we're going to realize just how much of the anxiety and the sort of existential threats and baggage we've been carrying around with us for what will ultimately end up being about 18 months. And at that point, I think a lot of us are really going to, with the benefit of perspective and it being in our rearview mirror, see just how much of a toll this time has taken on all of us. So today we're going to talk to one of the leading experts around mental health, specifically around mental health for employees and mental health for children. We're going to talk about what organizations should be doing to take care of the mental health, the stress, and the well-being of their employees. We're going to talk about what those of you who are parents like me, I have 12-year-old twin boys, what should we be doing when it comes to looking at the mental health and well-being of our children? And last, but certainly not least, what should we be doing as individuals and as business owners with big missions and big movements in the world to take care of ourselves, our stress, and our anxiety? To help us have this conversation today, I am joined by the amazing Dr. Roseann Capanna-Hodge, who is the CEO and founder of the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health. She's a mental health trailblazer and a top media expert who's called on by organizations like Fox, CBS, NBC, BBC, Parents, and the New York Times. Forbes magazine has identified her as one of the top mental health experts for children. And she's been called someone who is changing the way we view and treat children's mental health. Please help me welcome to the show, Dr. Roseann. It is so good to see you.
Well, hello, my friend. I'm so grateful to be here. And, I'm all about spreading the mission of helping, everybody have better mental health because we can. And there's so many easy ways that we can incorporate things into our lives to make it better.
Look, mental health has been something that by and large has not been perhaps given the due that it was deserved. And then here comes this pandemic, and suddenly mental health is front and center for business leaders, CEOs, government leaders, and officials. This is really your time. Your whole life, I feel like, has led up to this year and the urgency of mental health. So, with that sort of as the backdrop, what is the movement that you are leading?
Well, prior, as you already said, this was already a major issue prior to the pandemic. I mean, 1 million people a day prior to the pandemic missed work because of stress. I forget what the $1 trillion amount that employers lost due to employee loss of productivity due to stress. Now we have the pandemic, and it's just compounded, right, for a lot of reasons. And, we know American Psychological Association, APA, has a Stress in America survey. And 2020, they put it out every year. Parents, 70% of parents are experiencing stress. This is really a wake-up call to take better care as an individual, to take better care of yourself, as a parent, to take better care of their family, and as employers to recognize culturally what's happening to people. How can they bring employee wellness in a way that is authentic and meaningful and actually creates change for their employees, so that they're retaining them, because that's a major issue that I know we're going to dive into. We're losing a lot of employees as they've made a decision to stay with their families because they're overwhelmed. And really highlighting what we can and should be doing every day to take care of our mental health.
You're talking about kind of the fact that it was already almost at a boiling point. It was about 3 years ago, as you know, that the World Health Organization came out and declared. Now, this is actually, I'm hearing myself say this, and so I hear it, guys. I hear what I'm about to say. But 3 years ago, the World Health Organization declared burnout a global pandemic. Now, I think in hindsight, the term global pandemic is something that, I mean, it certainly was, but now we're living a true, contagious global pandemic. And so it puts everything certainly into perspective there. But if we were already having one pandemic of a global burnout, and then along comes COVID and what's happened, it's almost like, how does a pot that's already boiling boil anymore? Like, what happens at that point in time? And it seems like really we have reached almost like a tipping point where people can't take any more, right? Like, we're there, we're already there. What do you say to companies that want to address this? 90% of CEOs said this in the last 12 months. They've taken proactive action on employee well-being, but I would bet you they're not doing enough, Dr. Roseann. So what would you say to those companies that are listening? What do they really need to do to get this under control in their organizations? Uh-oh, did we freeze up? We may have frozen up here. Hopefully it wasn't me. Well, we'll bring Dr. Roseann back up here in just a second, because I think it was her feed that froze there. So while we're bringing Dr. Roseann back up, let me say this. If you haven't looked at the World Health Organization information about the global pandemic, then I would say go look at that. The other things that you want to look at right now is Fortune and Deloitte recently partnered on a study. They talked to CEOs of global 2000 companies. So these are the largest companies in the world. And they've looked at what are they doing in response to the pandemic? And that study is really fascinating. The top concern of CEOs was actually not revenue, it was employees, specifically employee well-being. And so 90% of them actually invested during the pandemic, when a lot of people thought that all spending on things like employee development would stop. Deloitte study is something to take a look at. We're going to bring Dr. Roseann back up here, but if you guys have not looked at that data from Fortune and Deloitte on where companies are putting their money and really supporting employees, please go look at that. So I was just sharing, Roseann, while we had that quick technical glitch there, that the CEOs are really putting their money where their mouth is, which isn't what they always do. But not everything is created equal. Where should they put their money? Where should they put their time and energy?
Yeah, I mean, in order to support their employees, I believe that there's four steps that organizations need to do. And the first is to build connection. The next is flexibility, stress management, and coping skills. And, employees are home. And yes, there's some benefits to that in some degrees, but we're losing connections as a team and unity. And I think companies and organizations need to build connection through different ways, whether it's, employees are working remotely, they're doing trainings together that support mental health. But I think one of the things that employers really, really need to do right now in order to retain employees, but also to support their mental health, is to be flexible. Most employees, especially our more senior employees, or employees that are, in their 30s and beyond, that are really highly valuable, they're parents, and they're struggling with teaching their kids from home. More than 50% of the US is doing some type of hybrid. And some places like California, the whole state, unless you're going to a private school, is completely virtual at this point. So they need flexibility, right? And this is where companies have to make decisions based on the value of their employees, to say, hey, listen, this is a trust relationship, and what can we do? What do you need? And it's those connections and conversations that help to build that, right? We can't just make blanket statements and say, absolutely, you can't have flexible hours. I'm seeing a lot of creativity with organizations, which I love, and are allowing employees to do things at different times, which is pretty incredible. So I think that's really, really important. And then I think companies need to make investments on giving employees real tools on how to manage their stress, whether that is, bringing in experts like myself to do brain hacks on how to work from home and different things that you need to do in order to stay alert and engaged and feel organized and not so overwhelmed. It's bringing in somebody to do yoga and meditation, whatever it is that is of value in your culture of your organization, because it has to be congruent. But employees need help, and they need it to be part of their day. And that's that last part. We need to build coping skills for our employees. They're really struggling. They're very, very overwhelmed. I mean, I've been doing mental health for 30 years. I've never seen people more overwhelmed. I've seen people with no history of mental health issues struggling. And I think that is just a reflection of what is going on in the world, right? We're losing connection, I think, is one of the biggest funnels of this distress people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was a couple of months ago, I was in a store, and something happened, and this woman lost it. I mean, lost it in a way that, like, over something really small. And everyone just kind of stopped and, like, let her have her moment, because it really was clear. This is probably a person who would never but that was her breaking point that day. Like, it was just too much. It was that final straw on the camel's back. I was part of a discussion recently with 100%, a group from 100% Human at Work, and one of the companies shared something that I loved, and it was such a small thing, but I really appreciated it. And they put a moratorium. Now, all of their employees are in the same time zone, so this makes things a little bit easier, than if you have employees in different time zones. But they put a moratorium on any meeting whatsoever, any Zoom sessions whatsoever, any conference calls whatsoever being scheduled between 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. in their local time. They happen to be, I think, Central Time, but absolutely no Zoom, no Skype, no conference calls, nothing during that hour. And they were really asking employees to please go outside. This was in the fall, so there was a little bit more, weather was a little bit more cooperative. But the idea of just protecting that time, really putting boundaries around it. Um, let's talk for a minute, though. And I just want to say, I'm glad you're bringing up about the retention piece. We've got over 1 million women who proactively left the workforce this year on their own terms, in large part because they made the priority their kids. Most of them were parents, and they wanted to spend time, Dr. Roseann, at home, making sure their kids were okay, that they didn't fall behind in school, that their well-being, that they were making it through. What should those of us who are parents do? Especially, I want to hear it from you, because you're the leading expert on mental health for
Yeah.
children.
I mean, first of all, what a loss for both the employee and the employer, right? To really get a valued employee, right? I have a large center, and I'm a second generation entrepreneur, and my parents own a large company. They actually own the largest transformer company in the world. You don't know that. And so I grew up every day, and I watched my parents do everything they could to retain good employees, being flexible and whatnot. And that, maybe it's part of the Italian culture, but it was important. And I did the same, and I do the same. And so it's about being flexible, but it's a loss. And for the employee, we love to work. I mean, we've been working moms, Angelique, like I love to work. And so what should we be doing at home, right? Whether you have made a decision to be home, but as parents, we need structure and routine. So our kids are craving structure and routine, and structure and routine gives us a sense of control. And that is going to help our mental health, and it's going to help the mental health of our children. And, school days are really structured. As somebody who, did a lot of observations in schools, I love when I go in a classroom and a teacher just does like a hand movement and the kids know exactly what's going on, because at that subconscious level, there's a comfort and a safety and a structure. And that's what our kids need now. But also it helps you as an employer, right? Employee, that if you are putting bumpers up and saying, this is when I'm doing this, you're letting your kids know. Obviously, there's got to be flexibility, but it really helps to create that predictability that we're sort of craving in a world where everything seems unpredictable, right? Because this isn't just about the pandemic. This is about all these things that have happened to us in this year that have just stretched the limits of our heart and our mental health. I mean, it's just, we're always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So structure, routine, predictability, and in your structure and routine, you have to put exercises like that organization. I've seen organizations pay for exercise classes at certain times of the day, right? And many companies were paying for gym memberships, but this is now really bringing it to a different level. And sometimes they're even doing it on Zoom where you can see the other employees, which I love. And, again, connection is really important. And, we're all feeling very isolated. Like Angelique and I just said, we saw each other a year ago. Can you believe it was a year ago? I mean,
a year.
and
Gone.
who knows? Who knows? A year ago, like last week, I was in Hawaii with my friends. So,
Feels like it, doesn't it? Right?
yeah, it does. So having that predictability is really important for everybody. And, I like to, as a parent, I have been working from home and from my office, and my kids are very used to it. And, there's been different points where my son has a chronic medical condition where we've homeschooled him. So this is new. This isn't new for me. And I literally would write my schedule up by the day and say, this is what I'm doing. This is really helpful. And, for them, and instead of that friction, it's different now because you can't do things like you could have done. Like we were saying, I'm in the Northeast, and there's a lot of strict rules here. Kids are still not really getting together. In other parts of the country there are, and it can really bring some relief to a parent because you can co-parent, you can do some things. People are doing pandemic pods. I think that's a wonderful solution for somebody working from home. And what is a pandemic pod? If you don't know already, it means you're getting together with another small group, typically of working parents, and you're sharing childcare and education. And I think that is a lifesaver on an emotional level. On you're not a teacher level. But I think it's just I want to validate the overwhelm, but I also want people to know that if you take it day by day, you break it down by the hour, you make sure you really truly are doing self-care for yourself, as well as your kids, because I talk about putting your oxygen mask on, moms in particular, but parents in general. We always put our kids first. We always do. And that's just the nature of what we do, and we should, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be I'm saying it's got to be a minimum of 10 minutes a day to do something like breath work and yoga, but you got to exercise, you got to get up, you got to move. If you want to make that a family activity, do it. But this is critical for mental health. It is a non-negotiable.
What do you think about? So I'm curious what your thoughts are on kids and meditation. It's something that we've tried to do with our kids,
Yeah.
and they haven't taken to it too well. But they're boys. They're 11 and a half. They'll be 12 in July. But we have tried, and especially because one of my sons, who last year when they moved to, they're back in school. Our kids go to a very small private school, so social distancing and protocols were a lot easier for them to put in place, and we're very grateful and recognize the privilege that we have to do that. But they were home all last year from March till the end of the school year. My one son handled it actually pretty well. Actually, he stepped up. It was really interesting to see, especially with twins, same age, right? And seeing how the two different children can handle the same experience. My one son
So
actually,
fascinating how people handle experiences
isn't
differently,
it?
right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So my one son actually kind of started to thrive. My other son, it was the complete opposite. And so we start doing therapy. We start doing all of these things to try to help him with his stress level and his anxiety, which I want to talk about the difference between those two things in a second. But we couldn't get him to do meditation. And I'm curious what your thoughts on it. And if you have any tips for those of us who use meditation ourselves, how we can start introducing that to our kids at a younger age.
Yeah. First of all, meditation is a lifelong learning process. If you talk to a monk, they'll tell you they're still perfecting their meditation. And when I was told that by a meditator, I felt freed
Mm.
because when I often meditate, and I've been meditating for many, many years, like 25 years, um, I start going, ooh, I gotta, put this on my grocery list. Ooh, I gotta send that email out. And that's just normal. It's like our mind, especially entrepreneurs, right? We have these amazing minds, right? I'm an Aquarian, and I just am always thinking. It's just constantly. I'll get up in the middle of the night and write things down and then go back to bed. I mean, I do it all the time. So, what can we do to quiet our minds? I started teaching my boys how to meditate when they were 2. So, here's an easy hack. Use a app. So there's Calm, there's Headspace, there's Insight Timer. And the reason why I say use an app is they do what's called progressive meditations. So you can get these free apps, you turn it on. I love to do it for those that are struggling to meditate. Doing it when your brain is already trying to power down before bed is an amazing time to do it. So you just search sleep apps, progressive meditation, and it typically walks you through a relaxing, tensing and relaxing of your body, and then it just focuses you on breath work. And so what's great is even if you're doing it and you fall asleep, you're not fully asleep and your brain is still getting the benefits. And let's talk about the benefits of meditation. So 10 minutes a day or more of meditation for 40 days rewires your brain, permanently changes your brain. And
Wow.
if you are on your own, your kids are struggling, right? So part of what happens with our brain, we're always thinking, right? And so many of us and our kids are quick thinkers. Kids are so smart today. I just love kids. Nobody wants to slow down to enhance their brain and think more, right? And think faster and better. But I'm here to tell you, as somebody who wrote 4 books during the pandemic, I wrote 4 books in 4 months. Uh, one of which was
That's crazy.
420 pages. I'm not recommending it to everybody, but I did
That's
a lot of
crazy, you
other
guys.
things too.
Oh my gosh.
But
That's
how did I
crazy.
do that? I did that in 3 ways. One, I meditate, paleo, and I do neurofeedback, but that's a whole other conversation. But when you slow down and you power down, just like I'm sure I had a computer crash because I didn't reboot my computer. When
Mm.
you reboot your computer, everything works better. And it's the same thing with meditation. You just need, you can do it 5 minutes, but 10 minutes is your real sweet spot. And the research says after 40 days, you're really getting lasting change in the brain. So
Wow.
start small, don't have big
Wow.
expectations. If your mind wanders, that's okay. You can count inside, you can go, count 1, 2, 3. You just want to quiet down. You don't want to use that time to plan out your content calendar for social
Not I've never done that. I've never tried to use meditation to do strategic planning in my head.
media. I know, I know. And we
Oh my
all, I
gosh.
mean, truly we need these kind of things. I mean, even if you're not a lover of meditation, I do breath work. And my favorite breath is a 4-7-8. So it's in for 4 seconds, you hold for 7, and you exhale. Exhalation is a little longer, 8 seconds. It could be longer. And that gets you into this. Our nervous system has a relaxed state. It's called parasympathetic dominant. I call it the hot tub state. When you get down into this relaxed state, your body just doesn't react to stress in the same way. You're much more able to use your frontal lobes to really get to that advanced thinking. And this is what we want for ourselves as an individual, and this is what we want for our employees, right? Because our employees are they're in the sympathetic dominant stress state, and you just can't process with efficiency. And that's why so many kids are coming to me and adults are like, I think I have ADD. And I'm like, well, you didn't have ADD before the pandemic. This is called stress. You know what I mean? So stress can hijack your frontal lobes. It's designed to hijack your frontal lobes. It's a primitive reflex so that you react without thinking. And so that's why it's really important to knock down our stressors on the daily. This is a long-term thing. This
Wow.
pandemic is not over. And I know we're all really excited about vaccines, but this is, virusology is 3 years. So we have 3 years before we're out of the woods.
Wow. 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 So let's go deeper then on that a little bit because, when you and I first met, I was sort of, I was just like, say more, say more. That was my whole, every time you said something, I'm like, wait, what? So you have a pretty interesting perspective about children and mental health and the way it should be approached. And I really want to give you a chance to talk about that because I do think, especially today, I shared with you in the green room that at one point when our kids were in public school, my one son, the teachers and the principals were like, just we think he has ADHD. He's going to need to go on medication. Go have him tested. We went and had him tested. And fortunately, we went to a really great person. And they were like, no, he's a child who A, has energy, B, is creative, and C, learns hands-on. Like he's learning differently. There's nothing wrong with him. Please. And we were pretty much like, no, we're not putting him on medication. But you have a really interesting perspective about children and their mental health. And I want you to have a chance to share a little bit about that because it's not pharmaceutical driven.
No, no. And I want to share a funny story with you. So, I know you're on Clubhouse. I'm on Clubhouse too. And I was listening the other day, and Barbara Corcoran
Yes.
was on, and Damon was on, and they were talking about their difficulties in school and how much they struggled in school. And here's a question I love to share as somebody who did a lot of consulting for private schools. What's the number one common characteristic of millionaires? Do you know this? Do you know the answer to this?
I don't. Oh, can we ask, does anybody else
Yeah.
know the
Does
answer to that? I'm
anybody know the
curious.
number one? Yeah.
And
Um,
yeah, and I think if it's pronounced Econom, you may have to just do a quick refresh sometimes on LinkedIn and things. It's their servers. It's not us. Does anybody know? I don't know the answers, but I know that I know Richard Branson has dyslexia.
it's dyslexia.
Is it really?
It's dyslexia, and 40% of all businesses are owned by dyslexics. Yep, in
No
America.
kidding.
hmm So, so when I hear this, I'm imagining that your kids are pretty damn bright, Angelique, right? You know what I
They
mean? That
are.
this is where we get our intelligence
Yeah.
from our parents, right? So what happens is we have these really bright kids who just learn differently, right? So dyslexia is your brain doesn't process the sounds the same way. But so what happens is they get these really creative brains. So, you have Richard Branson, you have, I think 3 of the sharks are dyslexics, right? And so many other famous people that I know are dyslexic. So interesting, right? And so what happens is, we want to pathologize them. We want to say, oh, they have ADHD. There's something like clinically. Okay, dyslexia is a clinical diagnosis, but it's it's just a different way that they learn, right? It means that somebody needs to teach them in a way that their brain can hear, right? They're sitting in a class where it's like they're speaking English, but it's like the teacher's talking Chinese. And once they get a really specific type of movement-based reading instruction, boom, it unlocks it. And 95 to 97% of dyslexics can read like that. So it's about reframing, right? You start with a problem, but wow, look at all this potential that a brain like that has, even an ADD brain. I mean, some of my top clients, who are really, really successful have ADD. They just need good organization or some type of system. So, how do I feel about kids' mental health? So first of all, kids are suffering, right? So 4.2% of kids in the United States prior to the pandemic had a physical or mental health problem. As of yesterday, the fifth largest school district in the United States, Las Vegas, recognized they brought their kids back to school during the pandemic because they had over 3,000 students attempt suicide or say they wanted to harm themselves or had self-harm. And they prioritized mental health over infection at this point, which I think is unbelievable, right? So kids are struggling. There's been a 56% increase in suicide rates in kids prior to the pandemic, ages 10 to 17. It's bad. Now, at the same time, we have an astronomical use of pharmaceuticals with kids, but also 1 in 6 adults in the United States is on a pharmaceutical for mental health. 1 in 6. So almost everybody in your family, somewhere in your nexus, maybe the next, your immediate and right outside of there is on a psych med. Yet people are really, really suffering. So what my platform is parents have the ability to really help their kids. They just don't know what to do.
Right.
And the foundation is really there. And the research supports it. It's nutrition, it's exercise, it's sleep, it is stress management and parenting and shifts in parenting, right? So there isn't one type of parenting that is better, but what we do know is we want to have kids that are autonomous, right? So if we think about all of us that are entrepreneurs, let me tell you something. My parents made me so independent. I don't know about you, Angelique.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I was 12 years old. My parents said, here's the money for the entire family for Christmas. You go out, you buy it, whatever you want, you take care of it, you wrap it, get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. We used to plan our family vacations on our own. This is prior to the internet.
Right. Remember do you remember you used to get the envelope in the mail with all the brochures from the hotels from like
Yes.
the tourism department of that city? Yeah, that was like a thing. My kids would be like, yeah.
My parents let their
love this
teenage
autonomous
daughters
part.
plan a trip to the Bahamas. Yeah,
I love it. If my mom is our firm administrator, and if she's listening, she's probably laughing because at 8 years old, I cut the grass, I washed the car, I shoveled the snow, I did laundry, I put dinner in the oven because she was a single mom. So, at 8, I'm like, washing dishes and putting a roast in the oven. Nowadays, of course, you probably would get yelled at for being a latchkey kid and stuff. But yeah, I mean, but I do think it teaches you a bit of grit and the ability to handle things.
It's coping skills. So one of the biggest breakdowns in our mental health for children today that I've seen in this is my 30th year in mental health. In my 30 years is a lack of coping skills. People are not resilient. And it's not just kids, it is adults as well. Their tipping points for stress are very different. And I talk about resiliency mindset, and it involves 3 things. It's how you view, manage, and recover from stress. And whether that's an adult or kid, if you view a stressor right out of the gate as a non-stressor, you're gonna not react in the same way. Recently, my car broke down on the highway. I hadn't had a car breakdown in 20 years, for crying out loud. And your car's like the technology. My car told me, stop your car immediately. And it told me it. And I was like, what's going on? I blew a gasket, literally. So, so I said, I got my 10-year-old, right? What I do right now influences him. Take a
Mhm.
breath, right? So I said, Giancarlo, I'm going to not pull over on the highway. I'm going to pull over down on the road. And he was like, oh my gosh. And I said, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. You know, mommy's got it. So we're going to pull over near Panera so we can get some tea and some hot chocolate. He was like, that's a good idea. And I just was like, it's going to be okay. I didn't overreact. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do any of those things. And so obviously I just am not a person to stress over those kind of things. What stresses me out is when people are disrespectful. That really bothers me. I always handle it appropriately, but something that gets under my skin, it's that. But my car breaking down, we were safe. It's okay. And I walked out of that, and it turned out to be one of the funniest days. And we wind up having this whole crack up thing around it. And we talked about it for like 2 weeks. It was hysterical. So, how I viewed that, really, my nervous system didn't activate. I didn't freak out. Even right now, I had a technical problem. Well, I got a backup. It's okay. It happens. This is life, and but if I was activated, if I wasn't taking care of myself, if Dr. Roseann wasn't doing her daily meditation and breath work, I might not have reacted the same way. And that's why we have to build resiliency. And for kids are not allowed to make mistakes today, right? And we talked about us being really independent. My parents allowed me to make mistakes. They didn't freak out on me. They were like, okay, whatever. But I also felt really good about having that power, and it has served me well in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? And so I definitely take independent action. I'm super motivated. And, but for our kids, yes, we want them to be independent in managing things, but we want them to be emotionally secure, right? So one of the best things, they look at all these characteristics of leaders, right? And, one of the most valuable assets in a leader is a high emotional quotient and having that high social emotional intelligence. And that really comes with grounding and self-awareness. And it starts with self-regulation and managing stress. And we're never, ever somebody said it was the first time I heard somebody say anything useful.
I
Thank
see
you.
that, Ani. I see that. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to have Dr. Roseann on, because you can see why I was eating this up when we were talking in New York. Vince, can you throw that up if you get a chance there? I agree. I mean, I agree, Ani, 1,000%. That this is really the conversation we need to be having
This is
about
the
it.
conversation we need to be having. And then what do you do about it? How does it happen? Right. So, it's little shifts create big waves. So yes, I love big things. Did I go for a 2-hour massage the other night? Of course. Okay. I try to do that when I can, but on the daily, what can we do? Because everyone is so overwhelmed right now. And so it starts with little things. If you can shift your language, even with your kid, I talk about coping statements, and changing how you're talking to your kid. So if you can say, a kid had an argument with a friend. So instead of saying, oh baby, I'm so sorry, say, wow, that was really pretty awful. I'm super impressed with how you handled that. How did you do that? You just start shifting. And so I validate and then give them that reinforcement to be independent in how they manage things. So we want our kids to be so um co- aware of who they are and confident, right? And that's not going to come from us helicoptering them. It is not.
No, it's not. No, it's most definitely not. But I'm also thinking, to Barry's point, that every business should hear this interview. My other thinking, my head sort of exploding here, because the other part of this is that companies think that they can fix all of them. They don't think, I mean, they're left to fix this in terms of trying to develop emotional intelligence in a 45-year-old manager that's being overreactive about something or what have you. And it's starting from the time that our kids are young, because we're not having this conversation. And so, it ultimately is going to come full circle in terms of the cost to society of all of
Yeah.
this.
Absolutely. And but I do believe it's so much easier to do these things with kids, right? So,
Mhm.
but any habit is a habit and it can be unlearned. Okay. It's just got to start with a motivation and then taking micro steps. I think that's what happens to organizations and individuals. They feel overwhelmed
Mhm.
by how they do things. And when you break things down and you make it really simplistic, but you provide the structure for it to be reinforced, this isn't a one-time presentation. You've got to bring experts in who are going to be there to cultivate this practice and make a cultural shift in an organization. You can't drive on empty. You can't. And I think that's what this culture was doing, right? Like, I couldn't be more grateful that I come from a different culture. I'm first generation American, and our culture really values um, family and taking time to enjoy life. And that was, yes, we also work really hard, right? Daughter of immigrants, but it was making sure that you always have time to do things that you love. And another gift I was given, to only do things that I loved, which made it really easy to say no to things. But we have to stop trying to push everybody on empty. And I know that organizations know this now, because they literally can't, because people are maxed. But what are we doing next? What are we going to do, and what are we going to change? Because I do believe the silver lining of this pandemic is a refocusing and a recalibrating on health and mental health. I really do.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think that the priority shifted. Josh Bersin had a great quote about how well-being, mental well-being, and wellness of employees really went from being sort of in the corner, like the lost shadowy corner of the HR department, squarely onto the desk of the CEOs and the CFOs, because they see the importance of it. Schools are talking about it. You brought up the Las Vegas situation, which I did not know about. It's really things that we were taking so long to make a priority now are the priority. And I think that is one of the silver linings of all of this. I want to give folks, if anybody does have a question for Dr. Roseann, by all means, please type that in. If you're on Facebook, give us your name, because sometimes it just says Facebook user. So let us know if you have a question for Dr. Roseann. I want to ask you about something. You have something that's called, and you tell me if it's typically pronounced reps, the reps
Yeah.
protocol. And I
Yeah.
want to ask you about that, because that's a little bit different than how a lot of people approach this. So let me ask that, and if anybody else has a question, by all means, we want to get that in today.
Yeah, so I use a reps protocol with individuals and organizations, and it's just to reframe and teach you those micro steps on how to bring health, happiness, and reduce stress, and really just take control quickly. And it's 4 steps. So it's respirate, which is breathing, envisioning, positivity, and stress management. So what happened in the beginning of this pandemic is I coined the term reentry panic syndrome, because as an employer, I saw people panicking about re-entering the workplace. And it was really almost truly a surprise to me that people who really, again, had no mental health issues were struggling, right? They were just feeling almost the world consciousness of overwhelm, even more so of the fear of re-entering. So I really designed this protocol because people needed something that they could do quick, and it didn't matter what age you were. And so breathing is the number one thing you can do to calm your nervous system down. From a neuroscience, I'm a super neuroscience nerd, to get it into this relaxed state. And you can use a 4-7-8 breath, a square breath, whatever it is, just do it, right? And then envision is using visualization. So our greatest thinkers are super powerful people. They always talk about visualizing. I mean, I don't take action before I spend time visualizing. So you want to visualize success. And this is not just stress management. This is good juju for life, right? So you visualize what you want to see happen and work backwards. And then positivity is being really positive. We are a culture of negative people who have negative thoughts. 70% of all decisions made are based on fear. It's to avoid something. Don't fall into that trap. And entrepreneurs and successful business people push themselves outside of that. They push their comfort zone. So being kind to yourself and saying kind words to yourself is really important. A batter who goes up to bat doesn't say, "Hey, I'm really going to stink at this." They're like, "I'm going to knock this out of the park." Right? We need to tap into our subconscious because that's running the show. And as corny as it is so powerful. Your brain knows no difference between what is real and what is told to it. So if we say positive things to ourselves, oh boy, is it very impactful on a lot of levels. And 4 is stress management, is actually taking that time, 10 minutes every day. It is so critical. And when people always ask me, they always want to talk to me about how I get so many things done. I'm telling
Me
you,
too.
it's because it's because I really take time every day. There is not a day, 7 days a week, no matter where I am, that I don't do something, whether it's breath work or neurofeedback or biofeedback. And it doesn't matter what your income level is. It doesn't matter where you are. You can do breath work. I do a lot of biofeedback using tools, devices with executives. Like back when they were on the train, they would do it on the train and nobody would know because it's just really kind of simple things. And you have to do it. It's important to take that time, and you will feel a shift really quickly when you do these things. Day one.
It's amazing. I need to do the 45 day or the 40 days of 10 minutes a day. Was it 45 days or 40
At
days?
40 days, you can do, if you research 40 days of Zen, you'll see the research study. So it's 40 days of 10 minutes or more of meditation. And you got to do it. It's like life changing. It takes you to a different level of consciousness and you can process so much quicker. It's
One of my
amazing.
one of my challenges, I don't know how much you know about Colby and the cognitive side of the
Yeah.
brain. And so I'm a 3 follow through, which means my brain naturally resists doing things like at the same time every day, like really rigid. I don't do well with that. And so that's one of the things that I'm always bumping up against about doing something
But
consistently.
visionaries typically don't have follow through, right? In the same
Right.
way, right?
Right. That's me.
We're
I'm
like,
the
what are
right.
you on
Exactly.
action? I'm an 8 on action taker because I'm a 6 on fact finding. I love the data.
I love that.
So,
I'm a 6. I'm a 9 quick start.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm all about like the future. It's the future and just kind of get out of my way and just let me be. And let me be. I want to make sure. And actually, Tiff, I think it's great you were putting your notes in there. That's great. I want to make sure I have the whole acronym though. So, because can you just say what that stands
Reps,
for again?
reps protocol. It's
Hmm.
respirate,
Okay.
envision,
Hmm.
positivity, and
Okay.
stress management.
All right. You guys got that, you guys?
Yep.
Okay. I know that I missed some of them. I want to make sure you guys walk away with that tool because I think at the end of the day, I will say this, no one is coming to save us. Like we have to do it for ourselves. Talk about coping and resiliency. Really, at the end of the day, I used to see this in corporate to some of my coworkers. I'm like, look, if you think that anybody's ever going to come to you and say, you don't have as much on your to-do plate. I'm going to save you. It's never going to happen. I had the job of 5 people on my plate in corporate. And that's what's coming for people, by the way, because they have downsized. The market's going to come back way faster than companies hire, and so no one's really going to ever come save us. We have to take that responsibility. And I think it's about making sure you're doing these things for yourself at the end of the day and doing them for your kids, right? Like you need to be there for your kids, but as adults, it's really on us, whether we're entrepreneurs or employees, to make sure we're doing these things. You've written 4 books while this pandemic is going on, which is just mind blowing. Are they available? And if so, where can people find those?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a book for therapists behind me. It's called Teletherapy Toolkit. That's on Amazon. And then my next book comes out April 27th. It's a series of 3 books. And it's called It's Going to Be Okay. And it's really the platform on how to reverse mental health. So I believe mental health can be reversed. It at least can be reduced all natural without medication. So, and it's all in there, and I walk people on how to do that. So that will, you can, if you follow me on social, or you get onto my website, you'll get information about it. And I put out great free content on YouTube on the Dr. Roseann channel, just trying to really get the message out to parents and individuals that there's a lot of positive things that we can do. I mean, we are destigmatizing mental health. I mean, we are, and it's a good thing, so and if we need to do exactly what you said, Angelique. We have to take care of ourselves for ourselves, so we can be better employees, we can be better friends, partners, and parents. And we're role modeling what we do, how we manage stress is exactly how our kids learn to manage stress. And the number one determinant of a child's mental health is maternal mental health.
Wow.
So I don't want to make you feel bad, but I want you to feel good about taking care of yourself. That's what I want people to think about. So
Wow.
important.
That is so important. Your website is?
drroseann.com. No E at the end. There it is.
There it is. Awesome. I love that you have a YouTube channel out there. Books coming out, you said April 27th.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite, other than YouTube, what is your favorite way for people to connect with you on social?
Yeah, I mean, you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook. I mean, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, just shoot me a message.
And I want to leave everybody with this too. You have programs for those who, especially if they have concerns about their children's
Yeah.
mental health, you have ways of supporting those folks that are not, pharmaceutical forward,
Yeah.
that are not like something's wrong with your kid here. It's really getting back to some of the deeper things, nutrition, structure, all sorts of holistic approaches to dealing with this. And so is there a separate address for?
You can just go into
Perfect.
drroseann.com and you can fill out a form there. We work with people virtually and in person. Back pre-pandemic, everybody used to fly in, but we work with people virtually. And I, do the same. I do corporate work too, and do a lot of work with organizations of different sizes, just supporting either teacher mental health or employee mental health. And student mental health. I still do a lot of work for helping school districts to meet the challenge of what lies ahead.
Well, to that end, I think your phone's going to be ringing off the hook as we
Yeah.
go forward, and these children start coming back into the classrooms, and the school districts and the parents and doctors and community leaders start realizing about this sort of mental hangover, this mental health hangover that a lot of us are going to have from all of this. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm so appreciative that you were so generous with your time today and coming to hang out with us and talk about this issue. To Barry's point earlier, I do think that this is a conversation that business leaders everywhere need to have. So you might hear from me about just connecting you with some folks that I think you should be joining together with to have that conversation. But this has been absolutely amazing. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much
Well,
for
thank
being
you
here.
for helping me spread the message that we can do a lot for ourselves. And if anybody feels stuck, just start one place. Start with breath. That's it.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Roseann. Thank you guys for all of your comments today, and Tiff for your notes there. It actually prompted me to double check on that acronym there. We'll be back next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern with another great show. Until then, make sure that you guys are subscribed to us on Spotify and you're following us on YouTube so you can go back and catch these again. And if you think that there's someone in your life, especially parents, entrepreneurs who have kids and they're concerned about mental health and what's going on, I think we don't usually say this, but I want to say this today, especially. Please share this. I don't know any family out there that doesn't have someone right now who needs support around mental health. And so I'd encourage you to spread the word. Have a great day, everyone. Dr. Roseann, thanks for being here.